Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's EnRoute webinar. My name is Bennett. I'll be the moderator for today. Our presenter is Aaron Clapp, an application specialist at SAi. He knows everything there is to know about EnRoute, and today he'll be helping us understand what the differences between plans, strategies, and templates are, and how to use each of them. After the presentation, we will be able to answer any questions you have either about this topic or any other EnRoute topics. So feel free to put those questions in the chat, and we'll answer as many as we can. We are recording the webinar as always, so if you want to review anything that Aaron discusses, we'll be sending you all the link to that recording this afternoon, so look out for that. And that's it from me, so I'll turn it over to Aaron.
All right, sounds good. So plans, templates, and strategies. There are three different aspects about EnRoute that we kind of want to talk about and find out what their uses are and everything like that. And kind of find out what's the use case scenario for each one of them, because it can be a little bit confusing as to what each one of them does and how they interact with each other and what other parts of the application or of this how they interact with other parts of EnRoute. So let's get some text on screen here just so we have something to work with. Let's not use a single stroke font here. Let's just use something else. All right, simple text should be fine. Make it a little bit bigger. Make this easy to see for everybody. And we'll convert this to curves. Okay, so let's start with strategies, because I think this is a good place to start. And this is kind of the one I think most people are at least familiar with. If not, they've heard perhaps what it is. Maybe you use it, maybe you don't, but you've probably heard of it. So strategies are built into every Toolpath box. So for example, let's say if we want to do an outside cut on this, and we're going to cut these letters out, we would set a routing offset. The strategies are saved in a little bit of, or in this screen here. And we need to set up priorities and all of our settings up first. But just to kind of see where it is, we click Save As, and this is where we save our strategies. Now, you can always access your strategies up at the top here. Now, by default, it's going to have nothing in there until you add something. So what does a strategy do? Well, a strategy saves everything. It saves everything that you input into this dialog box. So that means whether you click internal, external, whether you use sharp corners or not, or if you use inlays, bridges, reliefs, it doesn't matter. We can turn all of this on and it'll save these settings for us. So for example, if we want to put in some bridges, let's say by number, and we want to do at least 3 bridges per part. We got our 1/4 inch end mill here. I'm going to go to my depth. I'll say that's just a 1/2 inch. And perhaps maybe I want an entry exit, right? So I can put in a line for my entry and my exit. And let's go up here. Maybe I want to set my feeds and speeds. So maybe we go, it looks like we've got something in here already, but we can say 110, 50, 18,000. We'll just put that in here and click OK. Now, when I hit Save As, this is going to save everything in both of those screens. It's going to save everything in the Advanced section, which is the Edit menu. So everything in here. And it's also going to save everything in here. So if I have multiple tools, for example, let's actually just add another tool. Let's add maybe a clean tool. So I'm using a 1/4 inch, maybe use a 3/16, and that's going to be my clean tool. I could come in here, maybe set my feeds and speeds for this one as well. Then we go 120, and we go 60. Okay, so some simple settings here like this. And when I hit Save As, I can give it a name. I typically like to save these with a name that makes sense to what's actually in it. So when you look at the strategy 3 weeks from now, you'll kind of know what it is. Sometimes a generic name is too generic. And so I like to be specific. So maybe something like, and you don't have to follow this exact example, but the idea is make sure that you put something in here that you will remember now, a month from now, 2 months from now, 6 months from now. That's the idea. Because you don't want to have to click on it and then go back and change it because, oh, I clicked on the wrong one. That defeats the whole purpose of doing a strategy, which is to kind of help alleviate having to set up all your settings every time. So I'm going to put in here 1/4 inch rough cut, 3/16 clean cut end mills. Something like that. I hit save. Now it pops up in my strategy box. And when I click OK, now it applies the strategy for me. And of course, my entry exits are a little bit hectic here, but that's a toolpath for me. Now, if I want to go and close EnRoute and restart it, or I close this file and I open up a new file, I'm working in EnRoute, I'm doing some different things. I come back in. Maybe I go for something like this, except for I spelled EnRoute wrong. You know, again, we'll resize that. I go back into my, even if I hit clear, so let's just clear this out, right? And I uncheck the bridges option. So I'm just clearing this out. If I go under my thing here, I can click on here and that pulls in all my tools, all my settings. I go in here, everything's already saved for me, all ready to go. So the essential part of this is that this allows you to assign strategies to frequently use toolpaths that you can use them over and over and over again. There's, in the CNC industry, there's going to be a lot of repetitive work where you're going to be using a lot of the same types of toolpaths. And so why try and remember that when you can save it inside of a strategy? Now, something also to know is that strategies are also independent per type of toolpath. So when I click on this list, it's only going to show me the strategies that are associated with this particular toolpath. So the island fill strategies are not going to be mixed in with the routing offset strategies or the drilling strategies. So they're all separate. So if I close this out, for example, and I want to island fill this instead, or hatch fill it, I've got my separate strategies for my hatch fill. And that goes for island fill. That goes for any of your toolpaths that you have here. So hatch fill, island fill, spiral, engraving, pyramids, drag knife. Even the drilling and the kerf compensation also has the same thing. The only difference with kerf compensation is that the settings are a little bit different in terms of you don't have a lot of the advanced options because it's you don't need them. And so you're just going to hit save as in the same way, and then they'll be in this little drop-down menu. So that's basically your strategies. Another thing to know about strategies is strategies are used in ATP. ATP, you may have heard of it. It's Automatic Toolpath. This is the program that we use to import cabinet parts from large manufacturing companies like KCD, Cabinet Sense, Cabinet Vision, other applications like that. In fact, we have a list here. If you go to File, Automatic Toolpath, and then click on Automatic Toolpath Setup, here is the list of our that we offer. So KCD, 3D Kitchen, Pathfinder, we've got all these listed here. So when you set up your parts and your maps and things like that for your mapping of your different layers, um, you are going to see your strategy. So you can see all the strategies here. So this is just something to know. If you're working with ATP, the only out of the three, plans, templates, and strategies, strategies are the only ones that will appear in ATP. So that's just something to know, because if you create a plan or you create a template, a cut template, those won't actually appear in ATP. So just something to know. If you're using ATP, then strategies is the way to save these. So again, easy, not too hard. Strategies save everything that we input into this dialog box and into the edit section. Now, what about cut templates? Those are a little bit different. So let's just go and grab our end mill here, and let's go with a 1/4 inch, and let's click the three little dots. Now, cut templates are slightly different, but similar to a strategy. The difference between a cut template versus a strategy is that the cut template only saves the options inside of this screen right here. And you might think that seems a little redundant, and you might say yes, or I might say yes. But the key here is that perhaps you use the same tool, but you use different speed settings based on different materials. So you may or may not want to create 10 different strategies for each material type. That can clog up your strategies quite a bit, right? If you had 10 strategies for each tool. So what we're basically doing here is we're kind of just subdividing it, and cut templates only save these values here. So I can have the same 1/4 inch end mill and have different settings inside here. So for example, I could set, let's just go ahead and set our final depth. Let's just say we're going to cut through the material at 1 inch, and wait, there we go, 0.75. I think our material is 0.75. So we'll do 0.75. And let's just do feed rate at, let's do a slow feed rate. So we'll do 135, maybe 10,000, right? And then I can hit save as, and this will be my 1/4 inch slow cut. And I can save that. And then perhaps maybe I want to have like a fast version of this, or a medium, or let's just do fast. So I can say maybe, I don't know if this is realistic or not, but this kind of depends on the material, but let's just say 500 inches per minute, and 150 down, and 18,000 RPM. Okay. Whether that's a good setting or not, I don't know, but this is going to be our fast. So I'm going to hit save. This will be our 1/4 inch fast cut. Save. All right, so now we can see, now we've got these in here. And so when I apply those, that'll be for that specific tool, or really for any tool, because I can click edit. Well, let's do this. Let's go here, and let's choose a 1/2 inch tool. Click edit. So I can actually apply these to any tool. It doesn't have to be. So perhaps my naming there is probably not the best, but you could. Maybe it is. Maybe this is a fast cut for only my 1/4 inch tool. Whatever. I can click on that. Now it pulls in my depth. It pulls in my speeds and everything that I had set in here. So this is kind of just a way to compartmentalize smaller bits of pieces if you want to subdivide some of your tools. If you use a 1/4 inch frequently with different settings, depending on the material, you might come in here and say, well, maybe my strategy includes the tools that I want to use and a few other settings like maybe some bridges and internal, external. But then, I could be cutting hardwood versus sign foam or something like that. And you might want to have two different ones, two different cut templates, depending on which kind of material you're cutting. Now, again, theoretically, you could just do that in the strategies because the strategy saves both. But this just kind of gives you an extra option in case you don't want to clutter up your main strategies with a bunch of other stuff. You'd rather have like a fast and a slow, or maybe you've got some other settings. Maybe you have one setting with entry exits. Maybe you have one without entry exits, that kind of thing. So it's kind of up to you in terms of the way that you want to do it. But that gives you options there for you to kind of split that up if you really needed to. But again, you're always welcome to do it either way. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned is editing a strategy or deleting it. So what if I say, well, you know what, I really don't like this one because it's not named properly and it's just, I don't know, I could never figure out what it is. No problem. Now, this may seem a little weird, but you have to hit that Save As button again. So if you're wanting to delete a strategy, you need to be in the window where it says strategy right here. So this is the main routing offset window that has strategy up here. I hit Save As, I highlight the one I want to get rid of, and then I hit delete. So you have to hit that Save As button first. And now it's gone. Same with the templates, cut templates. You hit Save As. If you want to choose one that you don't like, you just click on that one and hit delete, and that will get rid of it. Say, I don't want that slow one. It's way too slow. Delete it. That one's gone. And that's kind of how you can manage those back and forth. So that's cut templates, and that is strategies. Now, how about plans? Now, this one may be one that you've never heard of or is not quite as familiar to you, but plans are a combination of a little bit of everything. So let's say I have this here and I want to I want to cut this out, and then I want to apply a fill cut to it at the same time. And then maybe I want to put some drill centers in it. That seems like an odd thing to want to do, but let's just say we want to do all three of those things. All right. So if I click on the plan, so edit toolpath plan, what this allows me to do is this allows me to create a plan to apply multiple toolpaths to the same geometry and then recall that again. Again, this is really helpful if this is something you do all the time. Let's say you do a lot of engraving / routing and then drilling or something like that, and this is something that you do frequently. You can grab those objects all together and then apply all three toolpaths at the same time. So let's just go to our plan. I don't have any. Oh, I guess I do have one saved. If I click on it, it pulls up one that I've already created. So it's an offset with a 1/4 inch end mill and then a hatch fill with a 3/8 end mill. If I click on the edit button at any time, it will pull up the respective toolpath window and I can adjust those settings if I want. Or I can refresh myself with what settings that I used. I close it out and I can go back into my hatch fill, and this is going to edit the hatch fill, and I can find out what settings I have there, or if I already know what they do, then I don't even have to click into them. Let's clear this out though, and let's start a new one. So basically the way that I do this is, let's go ahead and do a routing offset. When I click on the routing offset button, it automatically pulls up into my routing offset screen. And from here, I could do one of two things. I can create a brand new set of information, or I can use some of my already created strategies to fill in here. I'm going to go ahead and use my one that I just created earlier. Click that one and click OK. So when I apply this plan, it's going to add that strategy to the outside of the cut. Now, let's say I want to do an island fill, or let's say a hatch fill with this. The reason why I like hatch fills is because I already have a strategy set up there. Let's clear that out. Click here, and I have a 3/8 hog out tool. I'll click on that. And of course, it's got all my settings that I've preset from before, including my passes and my fill settings and my feeds and speeds. Click OK and click OK again. Notice it's not applying the toolpath yet. It's still compiling it in here for me. And then for whatever reason, let's just say we want to do a pyramid on top of that. Okay, let's just get crazy with it. So now let's say I want to go in here and add a conic tool. And I don't think I've created one yet. No, I haven't. So maybe this will be my new 90-degree. Let's see here. 90-degree conic pyramid. Let's just do letters. Okay. And that'll be my settings there. Click OK. At this point, I can remove items, clear them out, kind of edit this as much as I want, or I can hit Save As. If I hit Save As, kind of the same thing as before. I can delete stuff that I didn't like that I've created in here. So maybe this doesn't make any sense anymore. Not sure why I use a drag knife with a spiral, so get rid of that one. I can hit Save As and say this is going to be my hatch. Cut out and pyramid. Save. So that's my new strategy. And I'm going to hit OK. And you can see it's already processing. And now it's applied all 3 toolpaths. You can see here on the inside, it's created my hatch fill. These lines here are the pyramid toolpath, which again, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense with what we're doing, but I wanted to apply as much as possible just to kind of see it. And then it also applied my strategy for cutouts with my bridges and my entry exits, all applied in one quick step. So you can use this for all sorts of different things. Anything that you would do multiple toolpaths with. The idea with a plan versus a strategy is that a plan has multiple types of toolpaths to it at the same time. So if you have any object where you want to apply more than one toolpath to the same geometry, then this is where a plan could come in handy, because then you don't have to click on the object, apply a routing offset, close it down, select the object, go into hatch fill, apply it, click out of it, go into pyramid. That's 3 steps that are kind of maybe not unnecessary, but if you have done, or if you do this frequently, that can add up to a lot of work, where this can save you some time. So kind of in review, strategies will save everything inside of the routing offset or the toolpath window. So that includes everything from the details of the bit, the things that are down below, everything inside of the toolpath, so your feed rate, your entry, it'll save everything in that screen. Plan or cut templates only save the options that are inside of the edit menu. So that's going to be your feeds and speeds, your entry exits, things of that nature. It's not going to save your bridges, sharp corners, female. It's not going to save any of that. That's going to be separate. And then finally, your plan templates are going to be things for, I need multiple toolpaths applied to the same geometry at the same time. So I'm going to put all these toolpaths on here. I might as well just apply them all at the same time versus applying them separately. And that's a good way to do that. Again, you've got almost everything you can think of here except for drilling. Drilling is the only one that's not in here. And mainly the reason for that is because drilling requires, or typically requires, very specific settings for you to place drills. In other words, you wouldn't want to put drills just anywhere. Typically, you want to use drills with like placing a drill at the center of an object, like a center of a circle or something like that. So the haphazard nature of just applying a drill anywhere is really not ideal for a plan. So that's why it's excluded, because you could put drills in places you really don't want drills. So this is more for your routing type stuff, and things like that. So that's plans, templates, and strategies. Again, some of them overlap with each other. Some of them kind of do similar things, but it's a good idea to have the flexibility to do this kind of stuff as much as possible. So you've got some different options. Some of you might not use the cut templates, and maybe you just save them all in the strategies. Maybe some of you will save fewer strategies and then we'll have subdivided into templates. And then some of you will have some plans, or maybe if you only apply one toolpath to one geometry, then the plans might not be necessary. But the options are there. They're all there to help you speed up the process so you don't have to continuously click through windows in order to create a toolpath that you just had to do hours ago or a few minutes ago. You can repeat that step with consistency. And then that way, if you have guys working for you, or if you have people who are designing versus applying toolpath versus machine running, new employees, whatever, they can learn the strategies and the plans. They don't have to know specifically what toolpath goes where. They say, hey, we're cutting this kind of material, this is the kind of thing this is the template that we use for that, and this is how we put that on. They don't have to know, well, how many inches per minute do I need to run this, or what's the RPM of the spindle. That can save you a little bit of time that way, and say, don't worry about that. Just use these plans or these templates or these strategies for these particular tools and this particular type of artwork and this kind of material, whatever. And then you've got some consistency going forward. So that's a good way to use that as well. So any questions on strategies, templates, plans, or anything else about EnRoute that you might have thought about while we were doing this demonstration?
Got a couple questions here already. First one's from Alexander. Could you make a plan for something like push-through letters?
Yeah, you definitely could. Again, it's one of those things where if you have, if it's all one geometry, yes. Although I would say that typically push-through letters have two sets of geometry with one single toolpath. So for example, you would probably have, let's delete the toolpaths off of here. If this was your, let's just say let's put a rectangle around this. Okay, so this would be your face board, right? So this would be the piece of material. So you're like brushed aluminum or whatever it is that you're pushing the letters through. This is your face material, right? So you would be doing an internal cut on this, and then you would have another layer or another part separate from this, and this would be the cut that you would do separately, maybe with a different background. Maybe if it's acrylic or something like that, you want these to be connected. So maybe you have something else behind it or whatever. But typically that would be done in one toolpath. So would plans help you there? Maybe. I guess it depends on how many toolpaths you're applying. The thing about plans that is kind of really important, or really the key, is that you're applying multiple types of strategies to each plan. So if you're only applying one toolpath to it, then it probably wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to use a plan. I would just use a strategy. But if you're adding multiple toolpaths to the same geometry, then yes, I would use a plan.
Great. Next question is from Damien. Can you use plan when you have multiple layers?
Yes, but I don't think it's gonna do the thing that you're thinking it's gonna do. So if I have this set up in multiple layers, what's going to happen is with the plan is it doesn't apply different things to different objects. It applies everything in the plan to all objects. So that's something just to kind of be aware of. So if I had this in a separate layer and then this in my top layer, I couldn't tell the plan to say, hey, only do the island fill on this geometry and then only do a routing offset or an engrave on this geometry. It's going to do all or nothing. So technically, yes, you could turn on all layers and grab everything and toolpath it all, and it would get that toolpath. So it would get all the toolpaths, but you can't define what gets what. If that's maybe I was over anticipating the question, but yes, you can use it with multiple layers. It's just going to apply to it's going to apply the whole thing to everything, not parts to different things.
Okay, next we got a question, good question from Matt. When we're saving a strategy, can we use a universally high depth value and allow the CNC to limit the cut depth with its onboard max depth setting? The idea would be to use the same strategy for multiple thicknesses of the same type of substrate and have the CNC limit the depth at runtime.
I would assume that that's possible. Now, this is probably something I would maybe check with your CNC manufacturer in terms of how reliable that is, or if that's something that's a good idea to do, because EnRoute will output whatever you tell it. So if you are working on half-inch material and the strategy says, 1 inch, it will cut past that material and cut into your board a half an inch. So if your machine has the ability to limit the depth and not air out when it sees too much depth, yeah, I can see where that might work. Although I can also see how potentially, if let's say you're using bridges, for example, bridges would be a really good example, because if you don't have vacuum pressure, or you need help with the vacuum, or your machine just doesn't have vacuum at all, you might use bridges, right? Well, let's say that you go from cutting a 1 inch piece of material and your bridges work great, then you go to a half inch, your bridges are going to get cut off in terms of, because your bridges are going to be typically towards the bottom. And if your bridges are being placed way down deep at 1 inch, and your machine is limiting the z-axis, then all of a sudden you won't have any bridges. So yes and no. It depends on what you're doing. So I would probably steer away from that strategy if possible, just mainly because the potential for damaging the machine is probably greater.
Yeah, Matt's saying that he's been using the max depth setting on his multicam for a while, and it'll always stop at whatever that's set to. But he agrees that, he wouldn't do that with bridges.
Yeah, no. So I mean that would work if you're doing that already and it works for you. Great. No, I would say that it's definitely doable. You just have to be more careful and understand kind of like, okay, what can and can I not do? It's just a workflow thing. Once you get used to it, it's probably not even an issue. It's just, for me, if I did that for the first time, getting used to it would be a little weird, because I'd be like, okay, am I sure it's not going to cut all the way through? So it's just a kind of a machine thing. Once you're familiar with your machine and kind of comfortable with it, it's no big deal, kind of routine. But if you're doing it for the first time, that would be probably, I'm sure, a little sketchy. But then once you got used to it, you'd be like, oh, it's good now.
All right. Any last questions for Aaron while we've got him live here? If you do come up with any questions after we close today, you can always add them as a comment on the YouTube video, and we'll try to answer them there, or direct you to a place where you can get the answer. I'm not seeing anyone typing right now, so I guess that means we're all out of questions for today, so we'll go ahead and close it out. Thanks, Aaron, for answering those questions and for walking us through this. And thank you all for joining us for this EnRoute webinar. Our next EnRoute webinar will be on creating one-of-a-kind designs with the component creator. That'll be on December 13th, and we hope to see you there. We'll have the link to sign up for that in the follow-up email that you'll receive later today. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter so you won't miss out on any webinars or other announcements, and you can sign up for that on our website. Thanks again for being here. We hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.